Welcome to OOTOTV, the out of the office investigation from the past into the future of health. This time, we're discussing anhedonia and its treatments in depression. This is Sue, and that quote on your screen right now is just absolutely chilling. It's from psychiatrist Dr. Sunil Ridge, and it captures a feeling that goes so far beyond simple sadness. It isn't about feeling down, it's about feeling nothing, a profound emptiness that, as the sources suggest, many people experience but often struggle to even put a name to.
And I'm Bob. And Sue, that's exactly why we're doing this investigation today on OOTV. We're talking about anhedonia. It sounds like a technical clinical term, but the experience it describes, that muted, empty feeling where joy used to be, is something that affects millions. We're going to look at why this happens, what's actually going on inside the brain when pleasure seems to just vanish. And most importantly, we're going to be spending the bulk of our time exploring what the research says is an incredible and rapidly expanding toolkit of treatments, from retraining your brain with therapy to recalibrating its chemistry and even using cutting-edge technology, all designed with one goal in mind: to bring joy back into life.
And this slide really lays out our roadmap for this investigation. We've broken it down into 6 key parts.
That's right, Bob. First, in Section 1, we'll really get to grips with the feeling of nothing, defining what anhedonia is and, just as importantly, what it isn't. Then in Section 2, we're going inside the brain, which I find absolutely fascinating. We'll look at the actual reward circuits that produce feelings of pleasure and motivation.
And from there, we dive into the toolkits. This is the really hopeful part of our investigation. We've got 3 huge sections on treatment: psychotherapy, medication, and the one I'm really excited to talk about, neuromodulation. We'll look at the evidence for what really works. And then we'll bring it all home in Section 6, talking about how you can build a personal health blueprint to put these strategies into action. All right, Bob, let's start with the feeling of nothing. It's so important to get a clear definition here. When we talk about anhedonia and its treatments in depression, our sources are clear. Anhedonia is a core symptom. It's not a minor side issue. It's central for about 70% of people diagnosed with major depressive disorder.
70%? That's a staggering number, Sue. That means for the vast majority of people with depression, this isn't just about sadness, it's about this loss of joy.
Exactly. But what's even more eye-opening is that its reach goes far beyond depression. Our research shows it appearing in a whole range of other conditions: schizophrenia, PTSD, substance use disorders, and even neurological conditions like Parkinson's disease. This is what clinicians call a transdiagnostic symptom.
And transdiagnostic just means it cuts across different official diagnoses, right? It's a fundamental problem that isn't confined to just one illness.
Precisely. And that tells us that if we can understand and treat anhedonia, we're not just helping with one condition. We're potentially addressing a core piece of suffering that affects people across the entire spectrum of mental health. It's a huge leverage point for treatment.
It really isn't one simple thing, Sue. Looking at the slide, we see the definition: reduced motivation, reduced pleasure, diminished interest. The term itself, anhedonia, actually goes way back to 1896. A French psychologist named Théodule Armand Rebogue coined it, and it's so direct, it literally means without pleasure. And our modern understanding has only deepened that. It's really a spectrum. The research talks about 2 main types, which I think really helps clarify it. First, there's physical anhedonia. Imagine your favorite meal, the one that always makes you happy, and it tastes like dust. Or the feeling of the sun on your skin on a beautiful day, and it just brings nothing. And then there's social anhedonia, which is perhaps even more devastating. This is when being with your closest friends or family, moments that should be full of connection and laughter, feel completely hollow. You're there, but you're not there. It's this profound and complex loss of connection to the very things that make life worth living.
And Bob, this next point is absolutely critical for anyone trying to understand this, whether you're a patient or a loved one. We have to distinguish between anhedonia and apathy. From the outside, they can look identical, someone withdrawing, not engaging. But as this slide shows, they are fundamentally different.
And the difference is pleasure versus motivation, right?
Exactly. Anhedonia is a loss of pleasure. Someone with anhedonia might still know, logically, that seeing their friends is a good thing. They might even deeply wish they could enjoy it, but the feeling, the positive emotional payoff, is gone. Apathy is a loss of motivation or caring. With apathy, that person might not even see the point of seeing their friends anymore. The value itself has disappeared from their worldview.
That's such a key difference. It's the difference between I wish I could enjoy this and I don't care about this at all. And I imagine that distinction is hugely important when it comes to choosing a treatment.
It's paramount. My favorite line from the research sums it up perfectly. With anhedonia, you might want to want something, but the feeling just isn't there. It's a broken pleasure mechanism, not necessarily a broken value system.
Okay, now we're heading inside the brain, and this is where the science gets incredibly exciting. At its core, anhedonia is understood as a breakdown in the brain's reward circuit. And Sue, it's not just one spot in the brain. Think of it like a mission control for joy. It's a whole network of different regions that have to work together perfectly.
I love that analogy, Bob. And in this mission control, you've got some key players. The research points to the prefrontal cortex. You can think of that as the mission planner. It's the part that assesses a potential reward and decides if it's worth going after.
Right. Then you have a crucial part of the striatum called the nucleus accumbens. If the prefrontal cortex is the planner, the nucleus accumbens is the celebration room. It's a core pleasure center that lights up when you experience something good. And connecting it all is the ventral tegmental area, or VTA, which produces the most famous chemical messenger of them all, dopamine.
And dopamine isn't just the pleasure chemical, which is a common myth. It's more of a motivation chemical. It's the juice that gets the whole system fired up, telling the mission planner, hey, pay attention. This is important for our survival and well-being. When this whole network gets disrupted, the signal for joy and motivation gets lost.
And this slide, Bob, gets to what I think is the most profound insight from the neuroscience of pleasure. It's the distinction between wanting and liking. They feel like one thing to us, but the brain treats them as two completely separate processes.
So wanting is the craving, the desire, the looking forward to something, like the excitement you feel on Friday afternoon thinking about the weekend?
Exactly. That's wanting, or what scientists call anticipatory pleasure. It's the motivational drive. Then there's liking, or consumptuary pleasure. That's the actual enjoyment you get in the moment, the delicious taste of the pizza, the sound of the great music.
And as the slide notes, they're linked to different brain regions. Wanting is more about those prefrontal planning areas, and liking is more about those core pleasure centers like the ventral striatum.
Precisely. And here is the crucial part for understanding anhedonia and its treatments in depression. The research overwhelmingly shows that in depression, it's the wanting system that takes the biggest hit. This creates a terrible trap. A person might feel zero motivation to go to a party. The idea feels exhausting and pointless. But, and this is so important, if a friend manages to drag them there, they might find they actually like it once they arrive. They might have a decent conversation and feel a flicker of enjoyment.
But because their wanting system is broken, their brain never learns from that positive experience. The next time a party comes up, the motivation is still zero. The breakdown is in that anticipation and drive, which keeps them stuck.
Exactly, Sue. And that wanting versus liking distinction leads us perfectly to this slide, which shows the entire reward process as a chain of events. A breakdown can happen anywhere along this chain. Let's walk through it with an example. Say, deciding to go for a run. Step 1, interest/desire, is the initial thought. Maybe a run would feel good. That's the wanting. Then step 2, anticipation kicks in. You start thinking about the route, the feeling of accomplishment afterward. You're getting ready for the reward. Step 3 is motivation. That's the hard part, actually putting on your shoes and getting out the door.
And then once you're running, you get to step 4, the hedonic response, or liking. The runner's high, the feeling of fresh air, and finally, the most important step for the future, step 5, feedback integration, or learning. Your brain updates its files and says, hey, that was worth it. Let's make it easier to get motivated next time.
And as you said before, Sue, for so many people with depression and anhedonia, the impairment isn't a total shutdown at step 4. They can still like things. The problem is a massive breakdown in steps 1, 2, or 3. Their brain's forecasting system is off. It looks at the effort of putting on the shoes and says, not worth it, because it can't correctly predict the pleasure that awaits. It's a forecasting error that kills motivation before it can even start. You're listening to OOTO 44 TV with research by author Paul Bulow. So, we've just spent time inside the brain, looking at this intricate, beautiful reward circuit that can unfortunately malfunction. Which leads to the billion-dollar question, Sue. Can we actually retrain it? Can we fix that broken forecasting system?
And this is where our investigation gets really hopeful, Bob. The answer from the research community is a resounding yes, and that's where this section on psychotherapy comes in. But we need to be really clear. As the research highlights, these aren't just general, passive talk therapies. These are specific, action-oriented strategies designed to get in there and actively reboot the brain's pleasure and motivation circuits, what scientists call the positive valence systems.
That's right, Bob. And it represents a huge shift in thinking. For decades, many therapies for depression focused almost exclusively on reducing the negative, tackling sadness, reducing anxiety. But this new toolkit, as you can see on the slide, is designed specifically to increase the positive.
Let's look at the first one, behavioral activation, or BA. This one is such a classic but so powerful. It's literally the just do it therapy. The idea is to schedule and engage in positive activities, even and especially when you have zero desire to.
Then you have cognitive behavioral therapy, CBT, which is more about tackling the thoughts that get in the way. It helps you catch and challenge those cognitive roadblocks, that automatic thought that says, it won't be fun anyway, so why bother?
And this third one, positive affect treatment, or PAT, sounds like it's straight out of the neuroscience labs we were just talking about.
It is. It's a newer approach that directly targets those reward circuits. It uses specific techniques, like teaching people how to deliberately savor small positive moments, like the taste of a morning coffee, or to actively monitor their day for good things, no matter how small. It's like physical therapy for your brain's pleasure centers.
That sounds incredibly powerful, but let's bring in a bit of that contrarian view here, Sue. For someone in the depths of anhedonia, doesn't the idea of just doing it, or savoring a moment, feel like an impossible task? The initial barrier must be immense.
That's the 10% critical point right there, Bob. And it's a vital one. It is an enormous challenge. These therapies aren't easy. They require a leap of faith and often a lot of support to get started. But the evidence shows that if you can get over that initial hump, the brain does start to respond.
And this quote on the screen from Dr. Reed just perfectly encapsulates the whole philosophy. Motivation is a byproduct of action. This is the core principle of behavioral activation, and it turns our normal intuition completely on its head.
It really does. We all think we need to feel motivated before we do something. I'll go to the gym when I feel motivated. I'll call a friend when I feel like it.
Exactly. But BA says that for a depressed and anhedonic brain, that feeling may never come on its own. It flips the script. It says motivation isn't the spark, it's the result. You have to take the action first. You go for the walk with zero motivation. You call the friend even when it feels like the hardest thing in the world.
And by doing that, you are manually kickstarting that reward process we saw on the earlier slide. The simple act of doing, of repetition, of rehearsal, starts to generate new data for your brain. It's the learning step and action. It might not feel amazing at first, but it provides a sense of mastery. And that slowly, painstakingly, rebuilds those connections. Motivation follows the action. It's a profound, life-changing idea.
So, we have these powerful behavioral tools for retraining the brain. But what if the brain's chemistry is so out of balance that even starting those actions feels impossible? That brings us to our next toolkit, medication or pharmacology.
This is where we're looking at ways to directly recalibrate that complex chemical soup in the brain, Bob, particularly those neurotransmitter systems like dopamine that are so crucial for reward and motivation.
And right away, Bob, we hit a crucial point that is so important for patients and clinicians to understand. It's a major potential pitfall shown on this slide. For years, the first line of defense for depression has been the SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors.
Everyone's heard of them. They are by far the most commonly prescribed antidepressants.
And while they can be very effective for the sadness and anxiety aspects of depression, the evidence our sources point to is shockingly clear. They show very limited benefit for anhedonia specifically. They often just don't move the needle on the loss of pleasure.
And in some cases, they can actually make it worse. That's what proanhedonic means.
That's right. Some people experience an effect called emotional blunting. It's like the medication turns down the volume on everything. It lessens the pain and sadness, which is good, but it also numbs the joy, the excitement, the highs. It targets serotonin, which is great for mood and anxiety, but it doesn't do much for the dopamine-driven reward pathways we talked about earlier. For some, this trade-off is worth it, but for someone whose primary problem is anhedonia, it can be the wrong tool for the job.
But, and this is the fantastic news, the story absolutely does not end with SSRIs. We have so many other options with much stronger evidence for specifically targeting anhedonia. This table on your screen is just incredible. It's from a huge 2023 review by Dr. Alessandro Soretti, and it's basically a power ranking for anhedonia treatments. It's so useful. And look right there at the top, the 3-star highest level of evidence treatments. You have medications like agomelatine and vortioxetine, which have more complex mechanisms than SSRIs. You have ketamine, which works on a completely different system called glutamate. And you have TMS, which we're about to get to. And look further down at the 2-star options. You've got bupropion, which is fascinating because unlike SSRIs, it primarily works on dopamine and norepinephrine, the very neurotransmitters that drive that wanting and motivation system. This is such a powerful message of hope. It underscores that choosing the type of treatments for anhedonia and depression is critical. If the first medication doesn't help with the loss of pleasure, this table shows there is a whole arsenal of other evidence-based avenues to explore with a doctor. It's about finding the right key for the right lock.
And that leads us to our final treatment toolkit. And honestly, Sue, this is one of the most exciting frontiers in all of psychiatry: neuromodulation.
It really does sound like something straight out of science fiction, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. But it's very real, and it's happening in clinics today. We're talking about non-invasive techniques that use tools like powerful magnetic fields or tiny targeted electrical currents to directly communicate with the brain. Instead of flooding the whole brain with a chemical like a pill does, this is like a precision strike. It allows clinicians to stimulate and essentially reset the specific brain circuits that are malfunctioning in anhedonia, those exact reward pathways in the prefrontal cortex that we identified earlier. It's a completely new way of thinking about treatment.
That's right. We're moving from a systemic approach to a targeted one.
And this slide brilliantly illustrates the effect. This data is for the most common neuromodulation technique, called transcranial magnetic stimulation, or TMS. And this isn't from some small, pristine lab study. This is from a big 2021 study at Butler Hospital looking at over 100 real-world patients. And Bob, it's crucial to point out that these were patients with treatment-resistant depression. These are people who have already tried other things, like medications, and they haven't gotten better. They are some of the most difficult to treat cases.
An absolutely vital point. So they measured anhedonia using a standard scale, the SHAPS score, before and after a course of TMS. And just look at the results on that chart. They are nothing short of dramatic. The average score plummeted from 8.1 down to 3.06.
That's more than a 60% reduction. That's not just a small statistical blip. That's a clinically massive, life-changing improvement for people who have lost hope. And this donut chart gives us a before and after picture that's just incredibly powerful, Bob. Before TNS, look at that purple slice. A staggering 79% of these patients were classified as severely anhedonic. Just imagine, 4 out of 5 people in that clinic were living with this profound emptiness.
And after treatment?
After a course of TMS, that number dropped from 79% all the way down to 22%. And even more amazing, look at the light purple non-anhedonic group. It went from just 8% of patients at the start to over half, 56% by the end. It's a monumental shift.
It's a total reversal.
It is. Now, in the spirit of good science, it's important we add the nuance that the study authors themselves pointed out. This is our critical 10% perspective. The scale they used, the SHAPS, is very good, but it primarily measures the liking aspect of pleasure, that in-the-moment enjoyment.
So this data powerfully shows that TMS helps people enjoy things again, but we have less data from this particular study on whether it restores that initial wanting, the motivation and drive to go seek out pleasure in the first place. That's a great point. Still, incredible results.
That is a great point, Sue. But for me, the single most impactful, most goosebump-inducing finding from that entire study is right here on this slide. The researchers asked a simple, vital question. Does the severity of your anhedonia predict your outcome? In other words, if you are in the absolute deepest, darkest pit of nothingness, are you a lost cause?
It's the ultimate question of hope, really.
And the answer the data gave back was a resounding no. They found that the patients with the most severe symptoms at the start had an equal, statistically identical chance of achieving remission as those with milder symptoms. Let that sink in. How sick you were had no bearing on how well you could get.
That is an incredibly hopeful message. It means that no matter how deep the loss of pleasure feels, no matter how long it's been, the door to recovery is not closed. Hope is never lost.
You're listening to OOTOTV with research by author Paul Bulow.
So, Bob, we've explored these 3 incredible toolkits: retraining the brain with psychotherapy, recalibrating its chemistry with medication, and directly stimulating it with neuromodulation. This brings us to the final and most important part of our investigation, putting it all together to build a health blueprint.
Because if this whole investigation has taught us one thing, it's that there is no single magic bullet. The research is clear on that. There isn't one pill or one therapy that works for everyone.
Not at all. The path to reclaiming joy isn't about finding a magic bullet. It's about being a smart contractor, finding the right combination of tools and materials to build a personalized, sturdy structure of well-being for the individual.
And this slide really gets to the foundational takeaway of our entire investigation, Sue. We have to understand that anhedonia and its treatments in depression significantly impact your health. We simply have to stop seeing this loss of pleasure as a mere side symptom. It's a core feature with a massive ripple effect. That's so true. It's not a side effect, it's an engine. And that's why directly targeting anhedonia and depression results in significant impact on mental and physical health. Think about it. When you restore a person's ability to feel pleasure and motivation, you aren't just tweaking their mood. You are giving them back the very engine that drives everything else. The motivation to eat well, to exercise, to connect with people, to pursue goals. It's the foundation of well-being. And because it's the engine, Bob, you can't just throw any old tool at it and hope for the best. This is not a one-size-fits-all problem.
We saw that so clearly on the medication evidence table. Giving someone whose main problem is anhedonia a standard SSRI might do nothing or even make things feel more flat.
Exactly. But for that same person, a completely different approach could be transformative. Maybe it's combining a dopamine-acting medication like bupropion with action-oriented behavioral activation therapy. Or maybe it's pursuing a course of TMS to directly target those reward circuits. It proves that choosing the type of treatments for anhedonia and depression is critical for a successful outcome. The right tool for the right job is everything. It's all about creating a virtuous upward cycle instead of a vicious downward one. And the research suggests that by targeting anhedonia and depression, you exponentially leverage mental and physical health. It's like finding the one domino that, when tipped, helps all the others stand up. When you specifically treat this loss of pleasure, you're not just patching a symptom, you're rebuilding the core engine of motivation.
And that rebuilding process has to be personal. That's what the P in our blueprint stands for, personalization. You have to look at the individual. Is their issue more with wanting or liking? Is it more about motivation or the experience of pleasure itself? It's only by targeting anhedonia and depression specifically for your needs to build healthy routines and habits that you can create a truly effective and lasting plan.
And our final point in this blueprint is that none of these advanced treatments exist in a vacuum. A course of TMS or a new medication works best when it's placed on a stable, holistic foundation.
You mean the fundamentals of health, right? Sleep, diet, routine?
Exactly. A consistent sleep schedule, nutritious food, some form of regular movement, these aren't just nice-to-haves. They are fundamental processes that support basic brain health. You can't build a sturdy house on a shaky foundation. In the end, targeting anhedonia and depression requires you to have a health plan, diet and daily eating and sleep routine, and process to provide the desired result for health. These basics make all the advanced treatments we've discussed work even better. And so that really is the ultimate question we want to leave you with today. We are at such a thrilling, hopeful moment in mental health research.
With this rapidly expanding toolkit we've just investigated, the science is finally moving beyond just fixing what's broken. It's a move from treatment to enhancement.
Exactly.
We are starting to ask these bigger, more profound questions. How can we use this incredible knowledge about the brain's reward circuits to not only treat anhedonia, but to proactively build and cultivate a richer, more rewarding, and more resilient human experience for everyone? That's the future we're investigating. Thanks for joining us today on OTOTV. From both of us, stay curious.